Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to betonline.ag today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone. Welcome to State of State. He's Jay King. I'm Tom Hannafin. I don't have a cool nickname. He does. He's the best. This week, we are talking about the relationship between Penn State quarterback Drew Allar and his new offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki. Some recent comments by Kotelnicki. A very, very good endorsement for number 15. What does this relationship look like as of now, from what we understand, and how important is this going to be in 2024 for the success of the Penn State Nittany Lions? Like, comment, subscribe, rate us, turn on notifications, comment on YouTube, and get at us on social media at State of State Pod. First of all, Justin, this brave new world we're about to enter with Andy Kotelnicki as the offensive coordinator, it is just that. It's all new, and we have some information of what we think Kotelnicki can be off of his time at Kansas, his time at Buffalo before that, and the reputation he continues to have every place he goes is that whatever you give him, he will work with, he will accentuate strengths, and he'll protect weaknesses. All those things hopefully work out for the Penn State offense this year, because James Franklin wants to see more explosive plays, wants to be better about limiting turnovers altogether. Not that Penn State was terribly bad in that department last year, but obviously continuing to protect the football very well, get scoring up, be better in the passing game, have a more explosive rushing attack. Like basically all the things that if you're playing a video game, you would like to see maxed out, something like that. So
for sure.
If that happy medium can be accomplished, that'd be awesome. Based on what you've heard thus far about Kotelnicki, the way that he's assimilated and what he's done so far as a part of this staff, how is the feel altogether for what Andy Kotelnicki is bringing to Penn State?
I mean, I haven't heard too much. I mean, besides a level of how vast his plays are, right? Like from just some of the players, just like the different options that they have on their play. So you just talk about a lot of movement, or they talk about the creativity. I think the robustness of his offensive attack is one thing that the players are getting acclimated to. That's like probably the only thing that I've gotten from anybody else. I mean, he's only been there for 4 or 5 months or so. So I think time will tell what that is. But that's the one thing that I've heard is the robust playbook.
Nothing wrong with that. Installation period happening during the spring, and we're about to find out here in August what this offense potentially looks like from the little glimpses that we're going to get at practice as the depth chart becomes a little bit more clear. Recently, Andy Kotelnicki, in an article on Penn Live, there's a great piece about Andy Kotelnicki speaking about his relationship with Penn State quarterback Drew Allar, and this is a really positive endorsement, I think, from Kotelnicki. He told the media, quote, "I'm just telling you, when you talk to and look at college football players, when you look at people at that age," referencing Drew Allar, "a true hunger and willingness to want to improve, do everything right, and maximize his college football experience. Drew embodies that. It's not like that for every kid. It isn't, and I've coached long enough now that I can say that." What's your reaction to that? You with LIG Sports Group, you're dealing with high school players and college players on a regular basis.
I mean, I think that's a great thing to say about a player, right? Like it's more about the description of their character. I always had a funny saying though when I was in personnel and when coaches started to talk about players, I I didn't like when they went character first. That was just me from a personnel standpoint because it it just showed that the first thing that popped up wasn't their ability, but whatever stuck out to
Sure.
us, like, man, he's a good kid. Like that's and I deal with a lot of kids where it's like, man, he's a good kid. And then there's some kids that I deal with where I was like, man, this kid's special. So they both elicit like the different players elicit a different feeling, not that one's wrong or one's right. So it's just interesting when the coach leads with he's one of the players of the old amateur age. So that's essentially what he said, right?
Yeah, it just seemed like that
That's
overall it's been a positive relationship
that's
and
good.
wanting to improve like that. That's what we've heard about Drew since he walked in the door, and that's been something that I've personally enjoyed hearing is that like I'm sure you've dealt with it. Kids who are, whatever star is next to their name, they could walk in and you can't tell them anything. You can't criticize them, you can't give them feedback, constructive or otherwise. And it's never seemed like Drew's been that type of kid. You know what I mean?
100%. So I'm going to use let me juxtapose it against it was unfiltered with Smoke Dixon and Coach Carl Reed on their show. They had the general manager at Texas. I think it's Brandon Harris, former quarterback. He was describing Quentin Ewers
Mm,
like the kind of the same way that you're just saying that he talked about Drew, and he's saying like, okay, Drew's taking advantage, getting better, and all these different things. And the GM from Texas described Quentin Ewers as he's elite in every single way. No moments big enough for him. We're like lucky to have him. It was like pretty straightforward like that. So you get a different feel for how they feel about their quarterback based on that. Like he didn't pull any punches. No, he's elite in every way. And this is with
mm,
a Manning as the backup quarterback. So like the vote of confidence from the general manager and how they saw from like a talent standpoint that sticks out. And then they just gave a little blurb like he's cool as a fan.
mhm.
So it's just interesting when you hear the descriptors of how coaches talk to players. So I just had that in the back of my head. I just recently saw the interview. So when you said that about Kotelnicki, that's the baseline of where I'm comparing it to. But they're different people.
True. And in this article on Penn Live, Andy Kotelnicki did describe Auer as having a special ability to process defenses and make smart decisions and elite level arm capability. Quote, he's got insatiable hunger to improve in every area that we talk about us wanting him to grow. He's taking steps and taking intentional steps in all those areas. I think part of that, what he's referencing, and it's funny because coming back to the passive aggressive comments of Auburn's Keandre Lambert Smith saying, oh, Peyton Thorne is organizing these, it's like, hey, let's go get some reps in, like outside of the designated times when players are allowed to officially practice. You'll hear players, especially offensive players, organizing maybe a 7-on-7 or just throwing on air quarterbacks and wide receivers and tailbacks. And Keandre was kind of saying, it's like, oh, like Peyton's doing that. And maybe saying that like Drew wasn't doing that. It was like, okay, yeah, like he was a first year quarterback, kind of getting his feet under him. We've heard multiple reports of Drew organizing those things, leading those things off the field this offseason. So it kind of comes back to what you and I discussed in the remarks passive aggressively in the media between Allar and KLS is that, yeah, that progression has occurred for Drew Allar. Now we have to see how it plays out on the field, but it is that element of taking up the mantle and being the flag waver for the offense. Like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Let's all get together. Let's improve. Let's do these things off the field. And I think Drew's a self-aware, smart kid, Justin, is that, yeah, he realizes 2023 was good, but he can be great. He can be elite in the way that Texas is describing Quinn Ewers. He has that ability, but I'm just encouraged to hear all of this because Kotelnicki, it sounds like, the way you were saying that the playbook is vast. He could be throwing that at, a guy who is still a kid in the grand scheme of things. And that could throw a lot of guys off at this level.
Yep. Comes with the territory. I'm just saying this is yeah, this is big time football. I completely agree with everything that you're saying, and I think it's a great report from Kotelnicki about Drew. It's surface level, and you could tell that he's still trying to figure out who he is. Because I was just using it against a staff that like they know who that guy is and how they talk about it. And it's nothing against Andy or Drew, but it shows that he has the baseline to develop and he wants to develop. I think we all know that and see that from Drew when he posts a lot of workout videos. Like he's always had that worker's mentality. Even that's what first thing that drew me to him was like, oh, he's more like that Terminator, work, 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 and that's fine and dandy, right? But we're still talking about producing and showing up at certain levels on the football field, and it's like that's hard to judge right now. It's like in the building, we have these discussions in the off season about how guys are working out with the weight with the coaching staff, and it's like
Mhm.
it's always like the guys that are on the top of the board. I mean, nothing wrong with effort guys, but like they're not always the guys that we count on in the fall. It's a completely different conversation. So until we get to the fall, we start having conversations about that. All these guys at the bare minimum should be trying to get better. So like him having those traits, it's good to have. It's good to have. Like let's just leave it at that.
Mhm. And even the Penn State strength coach, Chuck Losey, has spoken glowingly of the way that Drew has changed his body. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, it's like, well, what does that mean? And changing his body composition in that he's roughly the same weight that he's been, but just a little bit more functional, I guess, in terms of his overall build. And there has been this discussion going into 2024 because I think a lot of this is coming from Kotelnicki at Kansas. He had two running quarterbacks. So I think there was a natural assumption maybe by Penn State fans is that, oh, we're going to see running quarterbacks at Penn State. You expect that from Bo Perbula because that's kind of been the only thing Penn State has really given him to do for the most part in his time at Penn State. I'm of the mind, I'm like, I don't want to see Drew run all that much. He's capable of it. He's spoken out publicly saying he's like, yeah, I'm not opposed to it at all. He's happy to do it. He's happy to do whatever they want him to do. So working on changing that body composition. So if he is going to be a designated runner within a play, he can handle the contact and he can make the appropriate decisions to protect himself. That's a big thing. Yeah. How do you feel about Drew Allar being more involved in the running game potentially under Andy Kotelnicki?
I mean, if it's a part of the offense, then he has to do it. I think all he does is have to show a level of a threat and be able to still do his thing in terms of throwing the football. But I mean, I don't know. That's not his strong suit per se. I'm just saying that's not his strong suit. But if he has to do it to keep like the offense sound and unpredictable, better figure it out.
Keep him honest, so to speak. In your experience, regardless of the position, if a coach comes to you at the college level, obviously this is major FBS football, and there's a specific play that they're asking you to run, whether that's offense or it's like, hey, this specific route or whatever. Is there a certain point where you're able to say no to certain things, or is it kind of like yes sir, no sir, that sort of thing?
It's funny. That's a good question. And it's probably better on defense when
Hmm.
you're asked to be put in a position where it's like mother effer, like, "You sure about this?" Because like, you you like, because when the press conference comes, are you gonna be like, "Hey, I told him to do that?" But that's where it comes
Okay.
sometimes where, like, a defensive back coach that actually played versus a coach that is kind of just learn from the books. Like there's certain positions that you can coach in football where you haven't stepped on the field to be able to understand and empathize with what you're asking the player to do. So from a defensive back standpoint, yeah, there was a level of like, yeah, my freshman year, there was some stuff that would happen, but having vets like Alan Zamitis, where if Scott was to say something, there was a vet in the room like, we're not doing that. Like we'll say it, but like we'll get on the field and everybody has to be on the same page, right? Like if we're all wrong, we're all right. So it's just a matter of if you were to do something, the whole unit has to be under the same rules. But yeah, 100%. You get into NFL, like you start asking guys to play a certain position or play a certain technique, and they might be put in position to look stupid on national television. Yeah, we wanted to talk about that.
It's so funny how you put that because AZ sticking up for you and other guys who are younger, freshmen, sophomore, underclassmen. you could understand maybe Drew's first year, Sean Clifford's above him. Drew's not going to say no to anything. He's like, I'm here to work, mouth shut, ears open, that sort of thing. And you can imagine Sean being like, hey, maybe this is better for him or something like that. Sean had earned that ability to speak up, that sort of thing. AZ had earned that ability to speak up. You were new. A lot of other guys were new. And then as you get more comfortable, so it is interesting in that even though Drew was the guy last year, it's still like you just became the guy. Now a little bit more time has passed. So he maybe has that ability to say, like, hey, I don't feel comfortable with that. That doesn't work for me necessarily. Or even that selflessness, regardless of position, Justin, where you may have been in school and been like, a play got called for you to do something specific, and you're like, you know what? This guy can do it better than me, and that's going to help us.
No, I probably never said that. But like, no, probably would never. Like,
you had a lot of confidence. I understand
that wasn't going through my brain. But it's more in the sense of like to draw a long parallel. Like, I don't know if anybody's Harry Potter fans out here, but the Half Blood Prince, when he gets the book and like there's all the notes already written, like to transcribe what's exactly happening. Like, okay, coach says play this, but he really means do this, this, and this, and cover yourself here. Typically, those are players telling another player that's been in the fire, like translating for the coach. That's when you have like a real strong culture, right? And that's when you have issues, when you have people that understand that the coach is saying something that's not clear and they'll just let their boy go out there and fail because they want a chance to step in. So that's the sharing of information, or you talk about the cadence and rhythm of the game where it's beyond the X's and O's. Cause like now we're playing Jimmys and Joes. Like there's a chess match that's happening beyond the strategic part that from the coach's standpoint. So yeah, I think the great ones kind of put it on themselves because when they do, it's I mean, I'm gonna live and die by my call, but you have to earn that. So let me be very, very, very clear. Not to just go out there and just do anything reckless from that standpoint. Now we can't trust you. Now you're a
True.
liability as a
For
player,
yourself.
right? So like there's a level of building up that trust that like, okay, he's changing this because he understands what's what. And then there's a lot of offensive coordinators that trust a quarterback to correct them in their calls, right? Like, hey, we know we want to run this set to this look and this set to this look, and they get the A look and they call it a B play. We're expecting you to change it to the A look because like you're supposed to know exactly how we're aligned. So it's a relationship and that takes time and there's chemistry built and it's pretty dynamic relationship amongst everybody on offense and defense.
I'm also curious to see the relationship not only between Kotelnicki and Aller, but Kotelnicki and Danny O'Brien. Danny O'Brien, the quarterback's coach, has been with Drew now his entire time here at Penn State. Was I believe a GA officially, in title, and is now officially the quarterback's coach, or even it's like a blend of the two. I can't remember his exact title, but it's somewhere in that vein. So it's a lot of things, and that Drew, that progression to being the unquestioned guy. Well, after a while, it's like, well, who's your support system? Because you have to show strength, you have to show leadership, that sort of thing. He has a relationship with Danny O'Brien. He has a relationship with James Franklin. Kotelnicki is new. So how much does Kotelnicki trust Danny O'Brien to work with Drew Allar and get him to the places they need him to get to, communicate the things he needs him to communicate to? Good cop, bad cop, that sort of relationship exists. That's still something that's an element of we need to see where this goes. And it sounds like Penn State does have a good guy in Danny O'Brien for the job. Everything we've heard about him and most of the position coaches at Penn State. Let me be clear. James Franklin has done a phenomenal job putting together the position coaches with this staff. I know a lot of people like to knock him for whatever things they want, but you and I, Justin, talk about it constantly. Like, we're biased about Terry Smith, of course, but like arguably the best defensive back recruiter and coach in America. Juwan Sider, an outstanding running back coach. Ty Howell kills it with the tight ends. Phil Troutwine kills it with the offensive line. Deion Barnes doing a great job with the defensive line. Yes, it's still early with Marcus Hagans. I know a lot of people are taking shots at him for the issues at wide receiver. I'll put it that way. And it's like, it's still too early to really accuse one single person of the issues in that position room. But Danny O'Brien, I think, is going to be a big reason why Drew Allar has success in 2024. And then that relationship, Kotelnicki to O'Brien, we just got to see how that plays out. But hopefully that's a positive thing. You've seen it firsthand, that position coach to coordinator relationship. How tricky can that be?
I mean, it's very tricky. It just depending on philosophies and how philosophy of the coordinator and personality of the quarterback. And I think that's what Andy's probably speaking to. Is like, hey, this is a guy that I can build with because he's trying to get better. He's open to learning new things. He's not set in his ways. I think that's what he's signaling right now. Is like, hey, we can grow together. Like there aren't any like roadblocks or obstacles there. And that and I was just trying to echo like that's step one, right? Like I don't think he's given anything away of crowning Drew or saying that he's seen something. I mean, he has the abilities that we know he has, right? Everything he said from a physical standpoint is what we know about Drew. And what we're still waiting for from a fan base or just a team is like that next step from year one to year two as a quarterback. And can people visually or imaginatively or in their imagination, see him winning a national championship for us. And I think that's where all this stuff comes down to, even though it's a tall tale for anybody, but that's just kind of what comes with being a highly touted quarterback in this day and age of college football.
Training camp gets underway next month. We're going to learn a lot more about these interpersonal relationships and how it translates to the field. Like, comment, subscribe, rate us, turn on notifications, and comment on YouTube and at State of State Pod on social media. Let us know how you guys feel about this, especially. Drew Allar is going to be under the microscope in 2024, and there's a lot of buzz, a lot of potential of what Andy Kotelnicki can do to help bring this offense forward, because I think we've all wanted to see that for a number of years. Consistency, better productivity, etc. Do we get that this year? Time will tell. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Also, let us know what you think of the show on social media and check out all of our content on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Search for the handle at State of State Pod. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.